Hey guys, tonight we're stepping inside the stone heart of a medieval castle, not as a visiting tourist with a map and comfy shoes, but as someone who's, well, a little lost, a little tired, and about to be very curious. You find yourself at the foot of a spiral staircase, its worn stone steps curling up into darkness like a giant's frozen fingernail. There's a draught here, cold, damp, the kind that hints at things long forgotten. And as you raise one foot, you can't help but wonder, why spiral? Why not just a normal staircase like the ones at the mall? Well, it turns out spiral staircases weren't built for your comfort, they were built for survival. And if you had to live in one of these places back in the day, honestly, you probably wouldn't have lasted long. Between the rats, the damp stone, the screaming from the dungeons, and the fact that you had to climb these steps just to use the bathroom, this was not exactly Castle Airbnb. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And leave a comment with your time and location. I love knowing where in the world you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You raise your foot and place it on the first stone step. It dips slightly under your weight, not because it moves, but because countless feet have worn a shallow curve into it. Up ahead, the staircase winds to the right, hugging the cold, damp interior of a narrow tower. You grip the stone wall beside you. It's rough, almost sandpapery, as if it resents your touch. The air smells of mildew, iron, and something you can't quite name. Maybe ancient sweat, maybe fear. As you climb, you start to notice something. The steps aren't just narrow, they're uneven. One's a little taller than the last, one juts out. It's not a mistake, it's intentional. The people who lived here wanted intruders to stumble. Literally. If you were storming up these steps with a sword in hand and adrenaline in your veins, you'd trip before you even reached the top. And speaking of swords, there's a reason these staircases twist clockwise as they go up. It's not just architectural flair. Most people in medieval Europe were right-handed. That meant that anyone defending the staircase from above could swing their sword or axe with full range of motion. But if you were charging up with your sword in your right hand, the central column, the newel, would block your swing. You'd have to awkwardly stab sideways, and by the time you figured it out, well, let's just say the castle's defenders were already adding your name to the compost pile. You climb another step. It groans a little, like an old man rising from a too-soft chair. The wind whistles through a crack in the wall, making the candle in your hand flicker dangerously. You glance down. Below, the shadows stretch and sway, swallowing everything behind you. It's easy to see why guards hated night shifts in these towers. The spirals made it impossible to see what, or who, was around the corner. You'd hear footsteps echoing up from below and have to guess, friend or foe. And if it was an enemy, they had the advantage of momentum, and possibly of body odour, neither of which worked in your favour. A lot of these towers were designed so that only one person could ascend or descend at a time. In fact, there are records of castle sieges where a single guard held a spiral staircase against 5 attackers, because they had space, leverage, and gravity on their side. Imagine that, your whole defence strategy boiling down to the fact that your hallway was too narrow for teamwork. You press on. The climb is exhausting in a weird way. Not steep enough to justify how tired you're getting, but somehow relentless. There are no landings, no breaks, no rest points, just the repetitive curve and the scraping of your boots against stone. There's a reason people had strong calves back then. Forget gym memberships. Just living in a tower was a full body workout. As you round the next curve, you spot a tiny slit in the wall, what's known as an arrow loop. It lets in just enough moonlight to show that this stairway has no railing, and the drop to the centre is real. Your candle flickers again, and for a brief second you imagine what would happen if you tripped now. The fall wouldn't be pretty, and no one's sweeping up the mess at 3 a.m. You stop for a moment and lean against the wall. You think about the guards who used to patrol these steps, hour after hour, night after night. No podcasts, no coffee. Just the creak of leather boots and the occasional terrified glance over their shoulder. Some of them would carve tiny marks into the stones, hash marks, initials, prayers. One particularly tired soul in a castle in Wales even etched "I hate this job" into the mortar. Relatable. To the wall, making it even harder to swing a weapon. The outside, wider edge? That's where the defender stood. More room, more momentum, more chances to send you tumbling back down like a very unfortunate sack of potatoes. Historians still debate whether spiral staircases were always built with defense in mind, or if some were just following tradition without fully understanding the strategy. But what's clear is this: the people who designed these places were not just thinking about aesthetics, they were thinking about survival, and they understood that every detail, even the direction a stair turned, could mean the difference between life and death. As you reach the top of this particular staircase, you feel the air change. It's colder but drier. You hear the wind whistling more freely. Up ahead, a heavy wooden door blocks your path. It's bound in iron, scarred by age, and slightly ajar. You push it open slowly. Beyond it, another room, another corridor, and probably more stairs. But for now, you pause. You've climbed, you've learned, and you've started to understand that in the medieval world, even something as mundane as a staircase was part of the grand game of power, paranoia, and protection. And this is only the beginning. You step through the doorway, and the wooden door creaks behind you as it swings shut. The room you've entered is circular, just like the tower it crowns. Slits in the walls allow moonlight to spill in, casting pale silver pools across the stone floor. You move forward slowly, your steps echoing softly in the empty chamber. And there it is again. Another spiral staircase, this one tighter, narrower, and steeper than the last. Of course, because the fun never stops in a medieval castle. This time, though, something feels different. As you begin to ascend, you notice the air getting heavier, not lighter. The stones here are darker, as though soaked in old memories. The steps are slick with centuries of wear, and they slope to the outside, tilting your balance ever so slightly toward the wall. It's a subtle thing, but your body feels it. That's not an accident either. These stairs are designed to tire you out before you even reach the people they're meant to protect. See, in castles built to last, and to repel attackers, everything was designed with strategy in mind. The curve of the staircase wasn't just about swordplay, it was about physics. When you climb clockwise, you naturally twist your body to the right. Over time, your muscles fatigue in that direction. Your sword arm becomes strained, your lungs compress unevenly. Meanwhile, the defender above you stands still, conserving energy. It's like playing a video game on nightmare mode, without a save point. You pause for a moment on one of the steps. It's narrower than the others. Your heel barely fits. You realize this isn't a flaw. Narrower steps on the inside of the spiral force you to stay close. You glance up the stairwell. There's a low ceiling overhead, just tall enough for you to pass. You duck instinctively, but it was built that way on purpose. Invaders would have to stoop, making them vulnerable. Try charging upstairs while bent in half, sword in hand, armor creaking. It's basically the worst game of Twister ever invented. And the materials, these weren't some fancy imported tiles. The stone was local, rugged, meant to last through sieges, fires, even the occasional earthquake. But more than that, they were intentionally rough. So you could grip the walls. So the defenders could keep their footing in the chaos. So blood, water, or boiling oil wouldn't make the stairs a death slide. Medieval castle designers were basically the grim ancestors of OSHA, except they didn't care if you slipped. They cared that the other guy did. As you ascend, you spot something etched into the side of the newel, the central spine of the staircase. It's faint, nearly lost to time, but still legible, a symbol. A simple circle with a cross through it. That's not graffiti. That's a mason's mark. It's how the stoneworkers were paid. Back then, each stonemason had a unique symbol they would carve into the blocks they worked on. After a day's labour, the overseer would count the marks, not the hours, piecework, medieval style. But it wasn't just about wages. These marks told stories. In some castles, the same symbols appear on steps, walls, arches, like a hidden signature from the person who literally built the bones of the fortress. Some symbols were practical. Others, a bit more mysterious. Historians still debate whether some marks were superstitious, protection against evil, hidden blessings, or curses for those who would trespass. And when a castle fell, these carvings were sometimes deliberately chipped away, like erasing a name from memory. The stairwell narrows again, and you realise you're moving through a stretch that was likely reserved for emergencies. Castles often had multiple spiral staircases, not just one. Some were for the guards, others were for the nobles, a few were hidden entirely. But all had the same core logic: confuse, exhaust, divide. One of the most fascinating things is how many castles had false steps, intentionally misaligned stones meant to trip people who weren't familiar with the layout. They were especially effective at night. If you lived here, you'd learn them by heart. If you didn't, you'd fall flat on your face and probably lose a tooth or two before anyone even drew a sword. And don't think that this was limited to the big-name castles in France or England. Even modest manors had spiral staircases like this, because the logic was universal. When you live in a time where war can come to your doorstep overnight, every brick has to earn its keep. You reach a landing, a rare one, and step onto it gratefully. Your legs ache, and your mind drifts to the people who once lived here. Guards, servants, children even, all climbing these same steps in heavy boots, carrying buckets of water, food, chamber pots, no elevators, no railings, just the eternal curve and the slow grinding ascent. And no one got to skip leg day. You lean on the stone wall, feeling its cold seep into your arm. Somewhere deep in the spiral below, a drop of water hits stone with a soft plink. You wonder how many people climbed these same steps in fear, urgency, or simple routine. How many fell? How many made it? You take one last breath and resume your climb. After all, the tower isn't done with you yet. You resume your climb, step after step, into a silence so dense, it almost seems physical. It wraps around your shoulders like a heavy cloak, broken only by the occasional creak of your boots against stone, or the distant sigh of wind filtering through a crack somewhere above. The candle in your hand flutters, casting tall, jittery shadows that race up the walls like nervous ghosts. The stairs here are even steeper, not quite a ladder, but close. Each step feels like it's trying to push you backward, daring you to fall. And there's a draft, coming not from the top but from below. A cold breath rising through the hollow spine of the tower, smelling faintly of wet moss, burnt tallow, and centuries-old dust. It's the kind of place where secrets linger. This particular spiral, you realise, is narrower than the one before. Your shoulder brushes the inner column with every turn. There's barely enough room to swing your arms. You run your hand along the wall and feel small notches in the stone. Ruts, really. Worn by countless fingers searching for balance. You're not the first to struggle here. You're not even the 1000th, and then it hits you. There's no torch sconce, no windows, no arrow loops. This isn't a staircase meant for soldiers or show. This is utilitarian, a direct vertical route, likely one that led from the kitchen or servants' quarters straight to the great hall above. Functional, hidden, and brutally efficient. In some castles, these were called service stairs, and they were often deliberately built to be tight, steep, and exhausting, because they were meant for the help. The cooks, the maids, the boys carrying trays of bread or pitchers of wine. If you were lucky enough to be born noble, you never had to touch these steps. But if you worked here, you probably dreamt about them every night and woke up sore. There's a story, maybe apocryphal, maybe not, about a scullery maid in the Tower of London who fell carrying a boiling pot of soup up a spiral staircase. She died not from the fall, but from the burns. Her scream, they say, echoed through the stone for days. Of course, historians still debate whether this event really happened or was just invented to terrify apprentice servants into being more careful. Either way, the lesson stuck. You reach another curve. There's a chipped tile here, unusual for a castle where most floors were bare stone. It's blue, or was once. Glazed, maybe. Just one tile. A single flash of colour in a world of grey. Was it a mistake? A whim? A mason's inside joke? No one knows. That's the thing about medieval architecture. So much of it was practical, but then there were these little human moments. A spiral staircase with one step that rings differently. A step that creaks louder than all the others. A step engraved with a symbol no one can quite interpret. Were they markers? Warnings? Or just someone trying to be remembered in stone? You think of all the feet that stepped here. Some in soft leather slippers, others in chainmail boots, some hurried, some dragging. A procession of forgotten lives winding through a passage that never quite ends. And then you notice something new. The sound of your own footsteps has changed. They're echoing now, not sharply but deeper, more space. That means you're close to another chamber. You round the next turn and step into a wide landing with arched stonework above. There are 4 doors here, thick oak, each one banded with iron, and yes, another spiral stairwell. This one leads down. The choice of direction is deliberate. Spiral staircases going down often had a different pitch than those going up, more defensive, more treacherous. Because going down was often a retreat, or worse, a descent into places less spoken of. But not yet, not tonight. Instead, you rest for a moment in the centre of the landing. You imagine it, a guard posted here, shivering through the night, with only a flickering torch and a mug of weak ale. Maybe he hummed to himself to stay awake. Maybe he sharpened his knife out of boredom. Maybe he told stories to the other guards, tales about hidden chambers beneath the keep, secret staircases that led nowhere, or ghosts of lords who died on these very steps. One of the more peculiar truths about spiral staircases in castles is that some of them do lead nowhere. They stop at bricked-up walls, or end in tiny windowless closets. Architects claim they were built for future expansions, or as escape routes that were never finished. But others suspect something stranger. Security by confusion, some historians call it, a maze of half-built staircases designed to throw off invaders, or perhaps just to keep residents second-guessing their own floor plan. You rise again, moving toward the next stairwell. But before you reach it, you spot something carved faintly into the stone above the doorway. A date. 1278. The year the Great Siege began. The one where defenders held out in this castle for 6 weeks using only rooftop rain barrels and salted pork. Eventually the attackers tried to burn them out. The defenders responded by dumping pitch from the top of the spiral tower, setting the staircase below aflame. The flames spiraled downward like a slow-burning snake. The tower was saved. The stairs were scorched, but stood strong. You look at the steps before you. They've been rebuilt. Darker stone, sharper angles. The curve is tighter now, as if even the rebuilding carried memory. You place your foot on the first step downward, you descend slowly, and the spiral pulls you in once more. The staircase tightens around you like a noose. Each step downward feels more reluctant, as though the stones themselves are trying to hold you back. The candle in your hand throws long, sickly arcs of shadow against the curved wall, and the air grows colder, damper. There's a faint echo now, one you didn't notice before, of dripping water. Somewhere below something is leaking, or crying. You can't quite tell. This is no grand hall or watchtower. This is the underbelly. Spiral staircases weren't just for soldiers rushing up to battlements. They also led down into basements, dungeons, and storerooms, where the air barely moved and the sun never reached. As you descend, the stone under your boots becomes slicker. These stairs weren't maintained like the ones above. These were built once and left to the elements, and the rats. You catch a whiff of something sour and metallic, not strong, just enough to wrinkle your nose. Perhaps wine spilled long ago, or perhaps blood. This is a place where footsteps used to echo behind shackled prisoners, where guards walked with keys jangling like wind chimes of judgment. The further you go, the more the walls seem to close in, the more the staircase seems to forget that light ever existed. You reach a small chamber at the bottom. It's not a cell, exactly, but it's close. The walls are damp, the ceiling low. There's a rusted hook in one corner, and what might have once been a bench, now rotted and green with lichen. A single slit in the wall lets in a slice of moonlight, thin and pale, like a dying memory. You run your fingers along the stone wall. It's coarse here, rougher than above. This wasn't meant to be touched by nobles. This was a functional space where people were kept, not housed. Some castles used spiral staircases to connect directly to these underground chambers, bypassing courtyards and gates entirely. That way, prisoners could be moved in secret, or removed in secret. In one castle in Normandy, there's a spiral staircase that leads from the Lord's bedchamber straight down to the dungeon. Historians still debate why it was built that way. Was it an escape route? A secret passage? Or, perhaps most unsettling, a private path for delivering enemies to their fate, unseen by the household. You move back toward the stairs. The air has gone still again. Not silent, just waiting. As you climb slowly now, the spiral staircase seems steeper than before. Maybe it's your legs, or maybe the design changed subtly. Some medieval architects made the descent shallow and the ascent steep. The logic was simple. It made escaping harder. A fleeing prisoner would struggle upward, slipping on the narrow, bumpy stairs, while guards above had clear footing and leverage. Some steps are broken. You skip over them instinctively, catching yourself on the center column. One has crumbled away entirely, a jagged bite taken from the spiral. That's not wear, that's fire. And not the cozy kind. In fact, during sieges, spiral staircases were often used as vertical death traps. Defenders poured boiling water or sand, yes, sand, down the center. The sand got into armor joints, scalding and grinding flesh. Oil was too precious. Sand? Sand was free and just as cruel. And in the narrow confines of a spiral staircase, there was nowhere to run. You pause at a landing halfway up. It's oddly open, an alcove cut into the wall with a low stone bench. Maybe it was a waiting area, maybe a guard post, or maybe just a place to collapse when your legs gave out from carrying grain sacks up the spiral for the 15th time that day. There's an old legend from Scotland about a kitchen boy who used to run spiral staircases with trays balanced on one hand and a dagger tucked in his belt, not for defence but to carve his initials into the newel post at each landing. They say if you find all 5, you'll know the secret of the castle. Of course, no one ever has. But that hasn't stopped the stories. You continue upward, and the candlelight catches something scratched into the wall. 2 names, linked by a crude heart. EM and JF. A secret rendezvous, perhaps. A forbidden meeting between a serving girl and a young knight. Or just 2 bored kids making their mark. Historians argue whether such carvings are graffiti, vandalism, or valuable glimpses into the daily lives of those who once walked these halls. The truth is probably all 3. Either way they remain, long after their makers have vanished into dust. And that's the strange magic of spiral staircases. They hold time differently. They don't tell you where you're going, they don't show you what's next. They just keep turning, enclosing, tightening. You never know what's coming around the bend. A knight, a ghost. A draft from a window that doesn't exist. 1 step more. You emerge into another circular room. This one is higher in the tower. Drier, warmer, there are rugs on the stone floor. Thin, faded, but softer than bare stone. Tapestries hang from the walls, their colours dulled by smoke and age. A brazier in the corner glows faintly. Here the spiral staircase leads up again, but the curve is gentler, wider. This part was designed for someone important, perhaps a lord, perhaps you. And now it's calling you higher still. You begin to climb again, and this time the stones feel warmer beneath your feet. The steps are smoother, worn not by soldiers or servants, but by people who moved with measured calm. Deliberate, confident. There's no moss here, no dripping water. The air smells faintly of wax and lavender. You've left the world of dungeons and damp corridors behind. Now you're entering the upper levels, the residential quarters of someone who mattered. This spiral staircase is different. It's broader, shallower, even graceful in its curve. The steps are just wide enough to allow for a small train on a dress, or for 2 courtiers to pass each other without brushing sleeves. If the earlier stairs were meant to wound and wear down, these were made to impress. But don't be fooled, even here, function shadows form. The staircase still curves clockwise, still limits the swing of a right-handed intruder, still subtly slopes outward to encourage missteps. The polish just makes the danger less obvious. You run your hand along the stone banister. It's unusually smooth, polished by generations of palms, or perhaps by care. There's a trace of heat in it, likely from the brazier below, but it feels almost human. Like the echo of a hand pressed here centuries ago, just like yours. As you ascend, you imagine the people who once walked this same path, lords returning from late-night councils, ladies tiptoeing back from forbidden meetings, messengers sprinting breathlessly with letters that could shift the fate of a kingdom. Spiral staircases saw everything and forgot nothing. There's a small window at the next landing. It's round, filled with thick bubbled glass that distorts the night sky into a dreamy swirl. You look out and see nothing but darkness and stars, just enough to remind you how high you've climbed, and how far you still have to go. This level, historians say, was often reserved for the private chambers of the noble family, bedrooms, studies, maybe even a chapel. The spiral staircase connected them all discreetly, ensuring the lord could move unseen, while still protected by height and architecture. You pass a wooden door slightly ajar. The hinges groan as it opens with the gentlest push. Inside, a small room, octagonal, with a low wooden table and a writing desk in the corner. A dried-up quill still rests in the ink pot, long since hardened into tar. On the wall, a faded mural, hard to make out, but it seems to show a hawk mid-flight. No one's been here in centuries, but the room hums with the faint warmth of memory. You wonder if this was a study, a place where someone once bent over parchment, scribbling alliances, debts, maybe love letters, or war plans, or orders that sealed someone's fate. A lot happened behind closed doors in castles, and spiral staircases made sure those doors stayed protected. One guarded stairway could delay an army, one wrong turn could doom an escape attempt. Even a noblewoman in silk slippers knew better than to trust a quiet stairwell completely. In one castle, Alnwick, in the north of England, there's a rumour that a spiral staircase in the Ladies' Tower turns counterclockwise. Theories abound. Was the lady left-handed? Was it built to confuse would-be assassins? Or perhaps the mason simply made a mistake and was too proud to admit it. Historians still debate the truth. Some claim the left-turning staircases were reserved for royalty with dominant left hands. Others think it was purely symbolic, an architectural expression of rebellion. Or maybe it was just cheaper that way. But here's the thing. Even spiral staircases that went the wrong way weren't accidents. They were signals, clues. Maybe not for you now, but for someone who knew how to read the castle like a book. In the right hands, these walls whispered, "You continue upward." The next stretch of stairs is lined with shallow alcoves, niches for statues, or perhaps candles. You imagine the flickering light in the stone recesses, casting moving halos over saints, warriors, or ancestors long gone. The weight of legacy pressed into the very architecture. There's a tapestry here, surprisingly intact. It hangs limp against the stone, its edges frayed, but its design still clear. A boar hunt, with dogs leaping, lords on horseback, and a swirling forest that almost seems to mirror the spiral you're inside. It's oddly self-aware, this woven piece, like the building knows it's a story within a story. And then another sound. Soft, steady, drip, drip, drip. Somewhere above, water is finding its way down through stone, drop by patient drop. A reminder that even these lofty halls are not immune to time. Even the finest spiral staircase eventually begins to crumble, not all at once, but slowly, quietly, like memory fading. You reach another landing larger than the rest. A stained glass window glows faintly with moonlight, casting a fractured rainbow across the stones. The light is cold, but somehow comforting. You pause, you breathe. The silence feels thicker now. Not empty, but full. The kind of quiet that listens back. You place your hand once more on the banister and begin to climb. Because the spiral continues. And so must you. You climb in silence, the kind of silence that nestles into your bones. The kind that isn't empty, but watchful, like the castle itself is listening. The staircase feels tighter again, curving with just enough severity to make you shift your footing every few steps. The air grows cooler, but it's a dry cool now, laced with the scent of ancient wood, faded parchment, and wax that melted long before you were born. Then, just above eye level, something catches your attention. A small notch in the stone, carved into the wall at shoulder height. You pause. It's a simple mark, angular, deliberate, and repeated again, a few steps up. You realize these are masons' marks, the ancient signatures of craftsmen who shaped the stone centuries ago. Each mason had his own symbol, etched discreetly into his work, not for pride exactly, but for payment. In the Middle Ages, masons weren't paid by the hour. They were paid by output. The more stones they carved and set, the more marks they left behind. These spirals weren't just built by kings or lords, they were shaped by hands rough from labour, by men who may have never climbed them again after the work was done. Sometimes these marks were more than just tallies. In several castles, historians have found odd symbols, half-forgotten runes, small crosses surrounded by circles, even animal figures. Scholars argue over their meaning. Some say they were wards against evil. Others claim they were part of guild traditions. And a few wonder if they were curses left by unhappy workers beneath the noses of their noble employers. The debate continues, quietly, in dusty academic corridors. You keep climbing, and as the light from below fades, you realize your candle is nearly gone, its wax dribbling like tears down the side. The flame stutters as a draft brushes past. You cup your hand around it, guarding the flickering light like a sacred ember. The steps here are uneven again, subtly different in depth, in rise. You trip slightly on one, catching yourself just in time, then another and another. They're not worn out, they're designed that way. This was a trick employed in many castles, irregular steps meant to trip the unfamiliar. A defender who knew the pattern could run up or down without a thought. An invader, by contrast, would stumble right into a waiting blade or a locked door. Some say it was a test of loyalty. If you knew the staircase, you belonged. If not, well. There's a castle in Bavaria where one such staircase is still intact. According to local legend, a nobleman once invited a rival to dinner, then led him up a darkened spiral stairwell where every other step was slightly off. The rival fell, broke his leg, and never made it to the feast. The nobleman dined alone. The story is probably apocryphal. Probably. Up ahead there's a narrow doorway cut into the wall, half hidden in the curve. You duck inside. It opens into a spiral stair even thinner than before, almost vertical now, more ladder than passage. You feel the air change once again, drier, warmer. The scent of dust mingled with something faintly sweet. Herbs, maybe, or parchment. This was likely a private stair, a secret one. These narrow offshoots were reserved for those who weren't meant to be seen. Advisors, scribes, spies. Sometimes even lovers. In the political theatre of a medieval court, moving unseen was as powerful as drawing a sword. A single whisper in the right ear, delivered by the right foot on the right stair, could reshape a kingdom. And some of these staircases were never on the plans. They weren't mentioned in ledgers or maps. They were passed on verbally, guarded knowledge, given only to the most trusted, or the most dangerous. You squeeze through another low arch, your shoulders brushing either side. This section of the tower was clearly not meant for someone of your height. The walls are closer, the shadows longer. But you push on, step by deliberate step, until the staircase opens again, like a sigh. A new chamber greets you, circular, with 3 windows framed in carved stone. Moonlight pours in now, silver and clean. There's a sense of openness here, despite the heavy walls. The ceiling rises into a shallow dome, and along the rim is a ring of faded frescoes, constellations, mythical beasts, and strange symbols you can't quite place. You walk slowly, your feet silent against the smooth stone floor. This must have been a study, or a library, or perhaps a place of prayer. On one wall stands a tall wooden cabinet, its doors ajar. Inside, rows of scrolls and books, their spines cracked and pages curled. Most are blanketed in dust, but one sits slightly apart, as if recently handled. You reach out, then stop. The urge to open it is strong, but so is the feeling that someone once read it here, by candlelight, while the tower slept below. You glance back at the staircase. It waits patiently. You're not done yet. You turn toward the next curve, and the spiral draws you in once more, Because up here, where the air is still and secrets settle like dust, the stones remember everything. And they're not finished telling you their story. You leave the circular chamber behind, and once again the staircase beckons. Familiar now, like an old companion who never says much, but insists on walking beside you. You press onward, boots tapping gently against stone, your hand sliding along the cool curve of the inner wall. The candle you carry is nothing more than a stub, but it keeps burning, as if curious too. This part of the spiral seems older, not worn down older, but different in construction, as if it belonged to an earlier phase of the castle. The stones don't quite match. Their colour is deeper, more iron grey than sand-coloured, and the mortar between them is thinner, tighter. The steps are uneven again, and narrower. Here, even your shoulder brushes the outer wall. You feel the squeeze. You're entering a portion of the tower built during a time of urgency, maybe during a siege, or just after one. Many castles were expanded in layers, each generation adding a new spiral, a new passage, a new secret. In this way, castles became like living things. They grew, they hardened, they adapted, and they remembered. You keep climbing, and it starts to feel like you're walking inside the spine of a giant creature, vertebrae of stone curving, repeating, rising. Step after step, each one a tiny echo of the last. Then, without warning, the staircase opens into a long corridor, dimly lit from high, narrow windows. The stone floor here is smoother. Someone swept it once. The corridor runs along the inner edge of the keep, connecting towers, like arteries connecting hearts. But even here, spiral staircases interrupt the path. You approach another one, this time descending. You hesitate. Isn't up safer, warmer, closer to the stars? But you go down anyway, because the spiral calls. This one curves sharply, almost claustrophobic. You descend 5, 10, 15 steps before realizing this isn't a staircase in the ordinary sense. It doesn't lead to a room. It doesn't even seem to connect floors. It ends. Just ends. A flat stone wall blocks your path, as though the staircase simply gave up. You stand in the silence for a moment, puzzled. You shine your candle at the wall. There's no door, no handle, but there is a faint seam in the stonework, almost invisible. You touch it lightly. Some castles built false staircases, deliberate dead ends to confuse invaders, lead them into traps or stall them long enough for the defenders above to drop something creatively lethal from the next floor. Stones, hot sand, or worse, beehives. Yes, beehives. Angry medieval bees were a legitimate defensive tool, and you thought your attic was bad. Other times these staircases weren't traps at all. They were unfinished. Money ran out, or war intervened, or the builder died and took the plan with him. Historians still debate the purpose of these non-stairs, and it's one of the few things about castles that even the experts throw their hands up over. So you do what anyone would do in a tight space with no way forward. You turn around. And there, on your way back up, you spot something. It's a name, scratched into the stone with surprising neatness, not the usual jagged graffiti of bored guards. This is careful, symmetrical. A. de Harville, it reads. No date, just a name. You wonder, was he the builder, a prisoner, a ghost story waiting to be told? Some say that spiral staircases are haunted more than other parts of the castle. Maybe it's the way they turn endlessly, always hinting at something just out of sight. Maybe it's the way sound moves through them, whispers bouncing, footsteps echoing back when no one's there. Or maybe it's the people who spent their lives climbing them, trapped in endless routines, fetching water, carrying messages, running from the sword. Up here, in the oldest parts of the keep, the stone remembers those footsteps, and maybe, just maybe, the echo you hear isn't yours. You step back into the corridor and take a breath. A tapestry hangs to your left, threadbare and torn. What's left of the image shows a staircase, a spiral one, of course, and a man holding a torch at the bottom looking up. No face, just the silhouette. The stairs seem to twist forever. You walk past it without comment. What is there to say? The corridor ends in a narrow door behind which another staircase waits. This one curves counterclockwise. That's unusual. Most medieval staircases turn clockwise as they rise, giving advantage to the right-handed defender. A counterclockwise staircase flips that logic on its head. Literally. It's rare, suspiciously so. Some historians believe these reverse spirals were built by left-handed lords, rare, but not impossible. Others argue they were designed specifically to confuse attackers, suggesting a castle that expected internal rebellion as much as outside assault. And then there's the third theory. It was symbolic, a political statement, a mark of difference. We are not like the others, the architecture declares. We turn the other way. Whatever the reason, you place your foot on the first step, and the spiral shifts direction. It feels wrong at first. Your balance fights it. Your sword arm itches even if you don't have a sword. Your instincts say, this is unnatural. But still you climb, and somewhere far below the echo of your own footsteps falls silent. You ascend into the backward spiral, and it feels like rewinding a memory you never lived. Each step curves to the left, not the right, an inversion of every staircase you've climbed so far. Your body doesn't quite know what to do with itself. The weight shifts differently. Your lead foot struggles to find rhythm. It's a dance you were never taught. Your hand brushes the outer wall now, instead of the inner. The air is no colder, but it feels unfamiliar. Even the sound of your steps, soft, deliberate, cautious, echoes in a strange new pattern, like the tower is questioning your presence. And maybe it is. This counterclockwise design wasn't typical in the medieval world. Most staircases turned to the right for reasons of defense and practicality. But a few lords, eccentric, ambitious, or just left-handed, insisted on going against the grain. It was a risky choice, architecturally speaking, but it sent a message, one that still whispers through the stones. At the next landing, you pause. There's a statue here, small and mostly crumbled. Just the bottom half remains. Boots on a stone pedestal, moss crawling up the legs like lazy ivy. A sword hilt juts out from the belt, and even in decay you can tell. The sword hangs on the left, left-handed. That settles that. You wonder who he was. A lord? A knight? A man so confident in his own difference that he had an entire tower twisted in his favour. Imagine forcing every guest, every servant, every soldier to relearn their footing just to enter your home. That's commitment. You keep moving upward and the staircase narrows again. The steps become taller, more irregular. You feel it in your calves, in the stretch of each step. This wasn't built for ease. Maybe it wasn't built for people at all. The further you climb, the less symmetrical everything feels. The curve sharpens in places, flattens in others. The ceiling dips abruptly, forcing you to duck. Some steps are smooth, others are jagged, as if left unfinished. You stumble once and steady yourself on a protruding stone that isn't part of the wall. It's a sculpted head, a grotesque. Its face is distorted, fanged, snarling, frozen mid-scream. Not the elegant gargoyle of Gothic cathedrals, but something older, cruder. Possibly meant to ward off evil. Possibly meant to be evil. Medieval staircases weren't just physical structures, they were psychological weapons. Every curve, every creak, every flicker of torchlight was part of the architecture's power. A spiral could confuse, could isolate, could unnerve. In one French castle, legend tells of a spiral tower so warped in its construction that it drove a king's chamberlain to madness. He climbed it every day, up and down, carrying documents between towers. After months he began to mutter, to twitch, to pause mid-sentence. They said the constant circling twisted his thoughts like the stairs were unwinding him. He was eventually locked in the same tower he had climbed, but this time without access to the stairs. Just 4 stone walls and no way up or down. Historians dismiss the tale, of course, but they also can't agree on why the tower was sealed with mortar from the inside. You turn another curve and your candle finally dies. The flame coughs out with a soft hiss, and you're left in near total darkness. Only a small slit of moonlight from high above keeps you tethered to your surroundings. You pause, allowing your eyes to adjust. The spiral continues ahead, slightly darker, slightly steeper, but still passable. You take a breath. The darkness here isn't hostile, it's just old. and quiet. There's something almost comforting about it. You keep moving, and now your mind starts playing tricks. You think you hear footsteps behind you, but there's no echo, just the soft scuff of your own boots. You think you see movement ahead, but it's just shadow meeting shadow. And the occasional whisper of wind through hidden cracks sounds dangerously close to a sigh. Still you climb. And then, finally, a door. It's narrow and tall, set deep into the stone like it's been pressed there by the weight of centuries. Iron bands cross the wood like ribs. A heavy latch greets your hand, and you lift it slowly. The door groans open. The chamber beyond is round, wide, and empty. Almost. There's a table in the centre, three-legged, tilting slightly. A single chair. On the far wall, a fireplace. Cold. Ashes long since settled into grey velvet. And in the centre of the room, above you, a spiralling ceiling, painted. It depicts a staircase curling into the heavens, angels climbing, demons descending. At the very top, a door. The symbolism isn't subtle. You sit for a moment resting. The silence here is different. Not the nervous quiet of the lower stairwells, but something still, thoughtful, like a sanctuary. Somewhere a bell chimes, just once, distant, maybe from another tower, maybe from the past. And you realize this spiral, this left-turning anomaly, was built not for defense or utility or even comfort. It was built for reflection. The ascent was the ritual. And now that you've reached the top, you don't feel triumphant. You feel present, as if the castle, after winding you through its bones, is finally acknowledging you. But there is still more to climb. The next staircase waits behind another door. And so you rise and step forward once more into the spiral's waiting arms. The next door is smaller, humbler. There's no iron bracing, no grand handle, just a simple wooden plank, with a thumb latch worn smooth by centuries of use. You push it gently, and it swings open without protest, revealing yet another spiral staircase, narrow and familiar. But this one is different still. The air here is warmer, dry, almost sweet. There's the scent of old wood, tallow smoke, lavender sachets, long since crumbled to dust. This staircase wasn't meant for guards or prisoners. It wasn't meant to test your sword hand or trick an enemy. It was meant for quiet feet, for bare souls in the night, for someone fleeing a bad dream or returning from one. You begin to climb softer now. The stones are thinner, less worn, and set closer together. Your boots no longer echo the way they did below. Instead, the sound is absorbed into the curved walls, like a whisper caught mid-sentence. This is the kind of stair you'd find in a bedchamber tower, a hidden stair that links rooms where secrets are spoken, or never spoken at all. Some castles kept these spirals tucked away inside the lord's quarters, connecting their bedrooms to chapels, studies, or private overlooks. In times of unrest, they were escape routes. In times of peace, they were shortcuts between one night's thought and the next morning's decision. You pass a door. It's ajar. Inside is a chamber lit only by moonlight, falling through a window of stained glass, a blue rose bordered in stars. There's a writing desk just beneath it, and the wood is carved with initials, faint but deliberate. 2 letters separated by a heart, the same as those you saw scratched earlier in the lower stairwell. EM and JF. The path of a secret love, perhaps. One that spiraled through this tower in stolen glances and silent footsteps. Maybe they met here, night after night, on this narrow stair, never speaking above a breath. Maybe this was their only sanctuary. And now you're walking their path. You keep climbing. The spiral tightens again, this time gently, like a hand on your back. You feel it nudging you forward, upward. The walls are painted here, though faded. Frescoes of vines, birds, the occasional lion curled into a corner. This wasn't meant for war. This was beauty's spiral, delicate, personal. And then you hear it, a creak, not yours. You stop, you wait. But there's only silence. No breeze, no movement. Just the echo of a floorboard remembering something from long ago. You resume your climb, heart slow but steady. There's a peculiar fact about spiral staircases in noble towers. Many of them, in the private quarters, doubled back on themselves. One hidden stair rising clockwise, another descending counterclockwise, looping in quiet patterns to keep servants and lords from crossing paths unnecessarily. Castles were not democratic. They were vertical hierarchies, literally, and stairs were how that order was enforced. You turn another curve and find yourself in front of a low wooden door, worn smooth by time. On its surface is a carving, barely visible in the low light. It's a spiral, coiling inward instead of out. An inward-turning maze, a symbol used in some early Christian traditions to represent pilgrimage, or introspection, or surrender. You open it. Inside is a chamber wrapped in velvet darkness, with only a single candle flickering on a small ledge near the far wall. The flame doesn't flicker as if in draught, but as if it's breathing. You cross the room and sit. This is the uppermost room of the tower's residential wing, maybe a retreat, maybe a place for prayer or quiet decisions. It feels untouched, forgotten in the best way. Some say the spiral staircase was as much a spiritual journey as a military one, that rising through the narrowing turns was like climbing closer to God, each step forcing reflection, humility, breath. You're not sure about that, but you are sure of this, in the quiet, in the curve, in the weight of each stone beneath your hand. You feel something. Something steady, old. Watching but not judging. Waiting but not rushing. Perhaps that's what spiral staircases were always meant to do. Slow you down. Confuse your body just enough that your mind has time to catch up. You sit for a moment longer, and then, as always, you rise, because the stair still climbs, and the spiral does not end. Not yet. You rise once more, leaving behind the small candlelit chamber and stepping into the next curve of stone. The spiral seems steeper again now, not just in slope, but in mood. Gone is the softness of velvet shadows and lavender whispers. The stones here are colder, cruder. The steps are shallower, sharper. The air grows dry and brittle, like old parchment left too long in the sun. This part of the tower wasn't meant for comfort. It was meant for endurance. As you ascend, the walls close in tighter than before, and the spiral begins to wind in sharper intervals. Each turn brings a sense of compression, as though the very architecture is curling around your spine. It's not quite claustrophobic, but it's getting close. You find yourself breathing more slowly, not from fear, but from respect. Because this was the war stair. Many castles had a second spiral staircase near the royal quarters, but it wasn't for elegance or escape. It was a last resort. A direct narrow passage leading from the highest towers down to the inner ward, the armoury, or in some cases directly to the gatehouse. If things turned dire, if the castle fell from within, this was the route the lord would take, sword in hand, pride in check. And the design here reflects that urgency. The steps are uneven again. A few have been patched, rough slabs set hastily into worn stone, likely after being damaged in some forgotten skirmish. One is entirely missing, a jagged hole that forces you to step wide, gripping the wall with both hands to avoid the drop. You can see down through the shaft, through the spiral's hollow core, where nothing stirs but dust and the occasional glint of spider web. You exhale slowly. These stairs weren't meant to welcome. They were meant to endure assault. A common misconception about spiral staircases is that they were simply architectural flourishes. But in castles like Rochester or Caernarfon, the staircase was a weapon as much as the sword or bow. Defenders knew that every inch of height gave them an advantage, and spirals compressed that advantage into a tighter, more defensible line. At one turn, you find a shallow alcove, just large enough for a man to stand hidden with a blade. Ambush points, these were called. Hollow spots behind the curvature, perfect for stabbing an intruder in the back as he advanced blindly into the next twist. Some castles even place slits in the newel column, allowing archers to shoot down the stair's hollow core. You pass such a slit now, barely wider than 2 fingers, and peer through it. You can see the faint impression of other staircases spiralling below, like fossilized motion frozen in stone. And again, you're reminded, this castle is not just a home, it's a machine. A stone machine for war and survival and legacy. But every machine has its flaws. And here, on this very staircase, is one of them. You find a place where the stones have shifted slightly, just a few inches, enough to be dangerous. The outer wall has bowed. The handrail, if you can call it that, is cracked. You place your hand on it gently and it wobbles. The mortar is flaking like dried skin. Earthquakes? Maybe. Siege damage? Possible. But more likely, time. Even the best masonry gives way eventually. Even the mightiest walls sink. The spiral, so proud and coiled, begins to sag beneath its own weight. A reminder that defense and decay are neighbors in any fortress. There's a medieval proverb that goes, "A tower climbs faster than it falls, but falls forever." No one remembers who said it, but whoever did probably built stairs like these. You keep climbing more carefully now. You're higher than ever. The air thins just a bit. You can feel the shift in pressure behind your ears. There's a faint whistling through the stones, wind threading through narrow cracks, soft and low like a distant flute. And then a door. This one is arched, rimmed in metal. The wood is bleached grey by sun and rain. The handle is iron, cold to the touch, etched with a symbol you've seen before, the circle with the cross from the lower stairs. A mason's mark, or something more? You push the door open. The wind greets you instantly. You've reached the battlements, above you sky, around you stone parapets. The tower roof spreads out in a circle, bounded by waist-high crenellations. The moon hangs low, casting the courtyard below in silver light. Flags, faded, frayed, flutter in the breeze. This is where the spiral ends. For now. You step forward, boots crunching gravel. The stones beneath your feet are different here. Flat, wide, laid not for movement, but for standing still, watching, defending. This was the place where guards stood night after night, watching for shadows in the trees, glints on the horizon, torchlight on the hills. And when danger came, they would descend, not run. Down the spiral, into the fight. From up here, the castle seems both vast and small. You can see rooftops, inner courtyards, the faint line of the moat. And beyond that, forest, fields, the world. You take a breath. The wind catches your cloak, or maybe just your imagination, and for a moment you feel taller than the tower itself. But even this height is not the end. Another spiral waits, smaller, thinner, tucked into the turret that rises from the corner of the battlement like a finger raised toward the stars. And you? You climb again. Because the spiral always continues, and so must you. The wind presses gently at your back as you cross the battlements toward the turret. This final spire stands apart, narrower, older, almost an afterthought. Its stones are weather-beaten, streaked with lichen and soot, and the small wooden door at its base leans slightly on creaking hinges. You grip the cold iron latch and pull. It resists for a breath, then swings open with a sigh like a tired sentinel giving way. Inside, darkness again. But this time, it's high darkness. You're at the top of the world, or at least the castle, and the staircase that greets you is no longer grand or noble. It's a coil of stone that barely fits one person, with steps so thin your boots hang slightly over each edge. These are the watchtower stairs, built for speed, for solitude, and perhaps for fear. You begin to climb, hunching slightly as the ceiling dips low. The spiral curves clockwise once more, returning to the original design. Right-handed defenders would have been favoured again here, but in such a narrow space, the point is almost moot. There's barely room to turn, let alone swing a sword. This spiral wasn't about combat, it was about observation. It led to the topmost post, the eyes of the entire keep. As you ascend, the air shifts again. It's drier here, thinner. Each breath carries a trace of ash, as if someone once kept a brazier lit on the roof for warmth. You pass a tiny window barely wider than your arm, and press your face close to the cold, glassless gap. The view is staggering. Moonlight spills over a vast plain, forest in the distance, the silhouette of a river winding through the valley like a silver vein. From up here you can see everything and nothing. Shadows rule the land now. And once upon a time, so did fear. There's a strange beauty in these high places. In medieval times, they were the front line of alert. The tower guard would climb these steps each night, lantern in hand, heartbeat in his throat, eyes always scanning the dark, looking for movement, for the telltale glow of torches, for siege towers rolling in like wooden giants. Many guards didn't sleep. They couldn't. Not truly. They leaned against the wall between turns, nodded off while standing. Some left carvings in the stones to mark the hours, 4 lines in a diagonal slash, over and over. One particularly restless soul once etched an entire prayer into the stairwell wall, begging for mercy not from God but from boredom. You spot a similar mark as you ascend, just above eye level, hidden in the stone near the inner column. It reads simply, "Still awake." You smile, just slightly. Further up now. The stairs groan underfoot, not from damage but from age. Each one tilts just a little more than the last, making the climb feel like walking across the ribs of a sleeping giant. You keep your balance with one hand braced on the wall, the other trailing behind you like a counterweight. There's another loop. Another turn. And then light. A hatch above your head. You press your hand to it and it lifts with surprising ease. A gust of cool wind pours down, tugging your hair, drawing you upward. You step through and emerge onto the watchtower roof. It's smaller than you expected, just a circle of flat stone with a waist-high wall, open to the sky in every direction. A single iron bell hangs from a post in the centre, green with age, its rope stiff and frayed. Beside it, a rusted spyglass on a tripod. Its glass is cracked, its lens pointed skyward. Someone once cared enough to search the stars. You step toward the edge and look out. The world lies below like a map. The fields are ghostly in moonlight. The river glints. And the castle breathes beneath you, a maze of roofs and courtyards and hidden staircases still turning somewhere below. It's quiet up here, not just in sound but in presence, like the spiral has brought you not just to the top, but outside of time. There's no dust, no footprints, only the wind, the stone, and the sky. This is the highest place in the fortress, the place no one comes unless they have reason. It's where warnings are given, where messages are lit by flame, where solitude is either treasured or feared. There's a legend told in some parts of Wales of a tower so high and narrow that the wind itself couldn't pass through it. Guards stationed there began hearing whispers, names they didn't know, orders never given, memories they'd never lived. The staircase below was said to twist not through space, but through memory. They called it the spiral of ghosts. Scholars roll their eyes at the tale. But standing here, you feel something stir in your bones. Not fear, not even awe, recognition. You've climbed through centuries of stone. Through battles fought and meals carried. Through love hidden and power displayed. Through defense and decay, escape and endurance. And here, at the top of it all, you realize something. The spiral wasn't just built to confuse or defend, it was built to witness. And now, so have you. You take one last look at the stars, then descend slowly, back into the spiral's embrace. Because even from the highest tower, the story always continues below. You descend from the watchtower slowly, each step carrying a faint echo like a whisper in reverse. The air grows still again, less open, more enclosed. You re-enter the coils of the spiral, and it's like being swallowed gently by the castle once more. Only this time you're moving with gravity. Downward, inward, back into its stone memory. But this isn't the same spiral you've already known. This one is broader, colder, and damp. The walls are slick to the touch. Your fingers come away moist with condensation, or perhaps just the sweat of 1,000 years. The steps are worn smooth in the middle, cupped slightly where countless boots once fell. You realize this is the servant's stair, a different spiral entirely, hidden behind a door just off the kitchen, wide enough to carry trays, but narrow enough to avoid comfort, built to be functional, forgettable. And like many things in medieval castles, both invisible and essential. You descend deeper, and the scent changes, gone is the cool air of the upper towers. Here it's warmer, thicker, There's the aroma of ash, old meat, and stale herbs. The kitchen must be nearby. You hear something faint, dripping water maybe, or the long-gone echoes of clanging pots. Down these stairs, servants would have rushed through their days, carrying bread, wine, ewers of bath water, always climbing, always descending, always unnoticed. You pause for a moment at a landing. There's a small niche carved into the wall, now empty. It might once have held a candle, or a bowl of salt. In some regions, salt was placed at stairwells to ward off evil spirits, or bad luck, or guests who overstayed their welcome. You continue down. There's a bend in the stair where the curve sharpens abruptly. You stop, momentarily thrown off balance. Why the sudden change? Then it clicks. This was a defense measure, intended to break the rhythm of anyone sprinting upward or downward, like a speed bump made of stone and calculation. You keep descending, and the air gets warmer still, and louder. At first just a subtle hum, so low you could mistake it for wind. But as you curve again and again, the sound resolves into something recognizable, the faint rush of water. Not a stream, but controlled, guided. Beneath this castle lies the most crucial infrastructure of all, the cistern. Many medieval castles were built atop springs or near rivers, with elaborate systems of channels and storage chambers carved into the bedrock below. It wasn't glamorous, but it was the difference between surviving a siege and starving within your own walls. You reach the bottom step and emerge into a long, cool hallway. The floor here is different, no longer stone, but packed earth mixed with gravel. The walls are rounded. The air smells of minerals and moss, but also of iron and wet rope. You're beneath the heart of the keep now, where daylight is a rumour. You follow the hallway toward the sound. It leads to a chamber, a circular room with a stone well at its centre. Ropes dangle from a winch above, and beside the well lies a wooden bucket, its handle smooth from years of use. The water below glimmers faintly in your lantern's glow, reflecting a pinprick of light from above that you can't see. This was the water source during sieges, guarded, trusted, and deadly, if poisoned. There's a famous case, Berkeley Castle, England, where it's said the well water was tainted during an attack, and no one noticed until half the defenders fell ill. Some say it was sabotage. Others claim the truth was more mundane. Rats drowned in the cistern. Historians still argue about it. The castle? It survived. The guards? Less so. You circle the well slowly. The spiral above now feels distant, like a dream remembered only by your calves. And you realize the spiral staircase didn't just lead to power or peril. It also led here. To the necessities. To the bones beneath the grandeur. A castle was built not just to awe, but to sustain. And its staircases were the arteries, pumping motion between feast and famine, war and peace, birth and burial. You find a small side door and step through. Another staircase waits, much shorter, much steeper, leading downward still. You follow it, and you're in the undercroft. It's a wide, low-vaulted room with arched ceilings and cool stone columns. Shelves line the walls, some empty, some still holding dusty casks and rotted sacks. This was storage, the pantry, the cold room, and in many cases the crypt. Spiral staircases sometimes connected to these places too, not for elegance or escape, but because death, like everything else in the medieval world, had its place. You move among the columns, each step softened by centuries of dust. You feel the spiral behind you now, not just the stairs, but the entire journey. Winding down, drawing you inward, tighter, closer to something quiet. At the far end of the undercroft is a small alcove, a bench carved from stone. A candle stub sits on it, unlit. And beside it, etched into the wall, a spiral. Not a staircase, just the symbol. It's coiled perfectly, delicately, inward, into itself. No name, no date, just the shape. You sit. The air here is still, not dead, just done. And for the first time since you began your climb, since your very first step on the stone stair, you feel something settle inside you. Not fear, not triumph, just rest. But the spiral, it's not finished yet. You sit a while longer on the stone bench, the silence thick and velvet soft. The etched spiral beside you seems to hum faintly, not with sound, but with memory. It curls inward endlessly, a shape without beginning or end. And for a moment you wonder if you've already climbed every stair there is, if you've already seen all the castle has to offer. But then you hear it. A hollow knock. Once. Then again. Not loud. Not threatening. Just curious. You rise, instinctively turning toward the noise. It came from behind the far column. You step carefully, boots barely whispering across the packed dirt floor. The light from your lantern dances across the walls. And there, half hidden in shadow, you see another door. This one is smaller than the rest, low, wide, and reinforced with blackened iron bands. A ring handle rests on its center like an eye waiting to open. You pull gently. It opens, beyond darkness. Not black, not empty, but thick and cool and waiting. A staircase descends. And of course, it's spiral. You hadn't expected another one, but here it is, curling downward, sharp and tight, disappearing into gloom. You step through the doorway, and the stone welcomes your foot like it remembers you. This stair isn't like the others. It's older, cruder. The walls are damp, covered in a fine layer of greenish growth that glows faintly under the lantern light. The steps are uneven, some chipped, some missing entirely. You navigate them carefully, one hand pressed to the cold stone. This was likely the first stairwell built in the entire castle, back when the keep was nothing more than a stone hall and a dream of permanence. Many medieval castles began with a single tower, and beneath it a spiral staircase. From there, everything else was layered upward and outward. The spiral was the seed. It makes sense in a strange, poetic way that it would also be the root. As you descend, the walls narrow further. The air grows thick. The smell changes, earthy now, rich with clay and age. You're beneath even the foundation stones, deeper than the well. Deeper than the wine cellars or the pantry crypts. You're walking into memory itself, and still the staircase turns. There's a theory, whispered more than written, that some castles were built atop older sites, sacred places, Roman outposts, pagan groves, and sometimes other castles. Stones stacked upon stones, spirals atop spirals, one era curling around the bones of the last. You pause on a step that's crumbled in the middle. Someone, long ago, tried to repair it with a slab of mismatched slate. It's not pretty, but it holds. A reminder that medieval builders weren't always meticulous. They were practical. You did what you had to. You used what was nearby. And if it didn't match well, it would blend in with time. You descend further. A low hum begins. At first you think it's in your ears. Then you realize it's coming from below. Not a machine, not a voice, just vibration. Like the earth shifting slightly in its sleep. You reach a landing, barely more than a ledge. There's a torch bracket here, long empty. Beside it another carving. This one a pair of eyes, open wide, scratched deep into the wall. Not decorative, desperate. They stare at you even now, unblinking. People say spiral staircases can drive you mad, that the turning disorients the body, and over time the mind follows. Some believe the continual circling triggers something in the brain, a kind of quiet unraveling. Most historians scoff, but they've never walked this deep. You continue, almost hypnotized now. The turns come faster, the steps tighter. You have to press your back to the wall at each curve. Your lantern begins to dim, casting strange shadows that shift as the flame dances lower. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the staircase ends. No door, no arch, just a stone floor, packed hard and smooth, set into a round chamber no larger than a shepherd's hut. The ceiling is low, the walls curve inward. You're in the castle's root. The very bottom. The coil's heart. In the center of the floor is a spiral. Not carved this time, but built. Stone blocks, laid one after another, forming the perfect shape. Not symbolic, not decorative. A floor meant to be walked. You step onto it, you follow the path. Inward, inward, inward. The spiral narrows as you go. Each step brings you closer to the center. And as you walk, the hum grows louder, not outside but within. Your breath slows, your feet grow lighter, and when you reach the center, you stop. There's no great revelation, no hidden treasure, no ghost or goddess, just stone and silence. But in that silence, something changes. Not the castle, you. You've followed the spiral from the topmost tower to the deepest dark, from war room to water well, from royal passage to servant's tread. You've seen the castle not as rooms or walls, but as motion, as memory. And now you rest at its core, still, but never stuck, because the spiral always continues, even in stillness, even in sleep. You stand a moment longer at the center of the spiral, letting the silence seep into your bones like warmth after a cold day. The floor beneath you is unmoving, yet it pulses with something deeper than breath. Not alive, exactly, but aware. A witness of time, of footsteps, of the turning wheel that has never stopped. And then, without sound or signal, you step back, out of the center, and the spiral reverses. You retrace your steps, not because you must, but because all spirals are journeys in both directions. You wind outward now, the curve pulling you away from the heart and back toward the world above. The stairs greet you again, the same worn steps, the same chipped corners. But they feel different now. Not threatening, not endless, just familiar. And you begin to notice things you didn't before. The way the moss glows faintly along the seam of the stones. The strange deliberate order of each block. The echo of water, not random but rhythmic, like the breath of the earth itself. You pass the carved eyes on the wall again. This time they don't seem afraid, they seem patient. And when you reach the repaired slate step, the one patched with mismatched stone, you pause and smile. It's imperfect, but it endured. Like everything else in this fortress, you ascend slowly. Back past the cistern, the undercroft, the pantry vaults, the spiral unwinds around you like a story you've already read, but only now understand. The walls breathe, the shadows shift, and the castle, though silent, feels warmer somehow. When you reach the main level again, it's quiet. The fire has gone out in the kitchen, the lanterns have burned low. Dust hangs in the air like soft snow. You pause by a window slit and look out. The sky is changing, the deep navy of night is giving way to the thinnest shade of blue, the edge of morning just beginning to rise beyond the hills. And still the staircase waits. One final climb. You follow it not urgently, not wearily, but willingly. And it leads you not to a tower, not to a gate, but to a room. A quiet one, circular, with tapestries on the wall, old but soft. A small bed of carved wood, with wool blankets and a pillow that has held thousands of dreams. A window half open to the wind. And in the corner, a spiral stair. Tiny. Almost ceremonial. You don't climb it, not tonight. Instead you sit on the edge of the bed. The room is still. The spiral behind you fades into shadow. And you begin to realize spiral staircases were never just about architecture. They were about transformation. They wound through stone so that we might wind through ourselves. In times of war they protected. In times of peace they connected. And in times of solitude they offered reflection. Some were built to confuse, some were built to defend, but most were built simply to endure. And they did. Just like you. You lie back now, eyes heavy. The stone beneath the walls is quiet, but not empty. It holds voices, footsteps, memories, yours now among them. You lie still, surrounded by the hush of centuries. The spiral staircase behind you disappears into shadow, but you no longer need to see it. You've felt its rhythm. You've moved to its quiet pulse. And now at last you rest at the edge of its long and patient breath. This room, this round uppermost chamber, is no throne room, no chapel, no battlefield. It's simple, intimate, a place where people close their eyes and let the castle hold them. The breeze from the narrow window brushes your face, soft and cool. You can smell the faintest trace of old stone, beeswax, and something warm, wool perhaps, or parchment, or sleep itself. Outside a bird calls. One tentative note, then silence again. The sky beyond is now a gentle grey blue, like ink spilled in milk. Dawn is coming, slowly, softly, and still the spiral echoes inside you. You think back through the path you've walked. The tower stairs, tight and defensive, the servants' spirals, practical and relentless, the war staircases, cruel and clever, the reversed spiral in the noble's tower, strange and stubborn, the ghost-like coils of the watchtower, and beneath them all the forgotten stair descending to the castle's root, the hidden spiral laid into the floor like a memory no one speaks of, but everyone walks. You didn't just climb a staircase tonight. You followed a shape older than memory. Spirals appear in nature everywhere, from the curl of seashells to the galaxies above. And humans, even in the hardest times, have mirrored that shape in stone, in staircases, in stories. Because we don't move through life in straight lines. We circle, we rise, we fall. And sometimes we return. Historians still debate a great many things about medieval staircases, about who built them and why, about whether the spirals always turned right, or if a few rogue masons carved their own path, about the grooves in the newel post that may have been made by swords or lanterns, or the tired thumbs of night guards trying to stay awake. But none of those historians ever followed a spiral all the way through the night. You did, and now your part in the story winds gently to a close. The wind still moves softly outside. The stones no longer feel cold. They feel like earth, like memory, like something that was here before you and will remain after. Your breathing slows, the spiral fades behind your eyes, not vanishing, just settling, like a coiled ribbon of thought. The castle, in all its turning, is quiet again. And so are you. Now, dim the light in your room, if it's not already. Let your body be still. Let your mind loosen its hold. The tower will still be here when you wake, and the spiral, it never truly ends. It just rests, like you. Curling softly into silence. Curling softly to shout into sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.